Yeah, just gonna wait just a couple minutes, okay? And I'm gonna start with the intro. Just a sec. Yeah, so hello everyone. I am Ronit. I am the one of the I'm the coordinator of Cassandra event. So basically, for the first three workshops, Mosaic and Cassandra would be having like common workshop. We would be discussing with the basics of machine learning and stuff, and then rest we would be diverging into the specifics of data science differently, and in the computer vision separately, right? So for today's workshop, since many of the first years are also joining, I have kept it mostly to the basics, like so that everyone can find a starting point, and like even if anyone is new to Python or like even the basics of machine learning, like we have all of that planned for you today. And yeah, so for today, for today's workshop, we would be starting with some intro to machine learning, like what is it basically, some technical definitions and stuff, what are the various branches of it. I would be moving on with Python, just basics of Python. I would be covering that in like 15-20 minutes, just to give an overview if someone hasn't had hands-on experience with it. And then Rohan would be continuing with the Python libraries, some which are very much needed for both of the events. Okay. Dinesh, tell me when to start. स्टार्ट कर दूंगा तो फिर मैं
Yeah, I guess we can begin.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, you can free to ask in the chats. Other coordinators are present too, and yeah, they would be happy to answer them. So let's begin with machine learning. So like most of us are familiar with the terms machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning, but actually, what's the difference between them, and what each one specifically means? So basically, we know that machine learning, the name itself suggests something related to like intelligence to machines. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So here's a technical definition. So a computer program is said to learn from experience C with respect to some class of task T. Basically, just saying that if you are training a machine, right? If you are telling it to perform some task, then after some experience, it should, if it is improving its performance with it, the experience, it is said to learn. Just simply, this is the definition, right? So basically, machine learning is using data for answering questions. So this using data part, in technical terms, this is the training of the machine. And this answering questions is predicting. So you maybe train a model to predict if it's a cat or a dog. And if you give it an input and it's predicting, that's basically answering questions. Okay. So here's a nice analogy you can use to understand machine learning. So in traditional programming, basically you give the data as an input and the program. And based on that, you are providing output. Like if you have done competitive programming too, you are making the program, you are passing the input, and you are getting the output accordingly. But machine learning is basically giving you the program, right? You give it the data, you also give it the output, but you are actually getting the program. Not exactly the program, but yeah, it's a nice analogy that you are not actually telling it what to do specifically, right? The machine learns itself. So here's some a bit overview of like what each term means, right? Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, these might get often confused and like intermixed together. So here's some definition. Like artificial intelligence is like a superset of everything. It's just, can you mute yourself? Uh, yeah. Thank you. So artificial intelligence is basically programming machines to mimic human behavior. That's it. So this encompasses the machine learning and the deep learning part, right? And as you can see, the deep learning, the part is a subset of machine learning, which is quite in development period. Okay, so it's very recent development. It has been developed quite recently. So I would be explaining the differences of two in a bit more detail towards the end. So this is just to give an overview that this is like a subset, machine learning is like a subset of artificial intelligence and deep learning a subset of machine learning, right? So this is just the types of machine learning problems, okay? So these can be classified into three. Like we would be needing one or two only, but let me just go through the definitions of each of them briefly. So supervised learning is basically, as I said in the beginning, you provide the input and the output too. So you are basically providing the input. You're training, giving the machine the data, right? You're providing images of, let's say, you have to make a model to predict if it's a cat or dog. So you are going to give it the machine examples. Let's say 1,000 pictures of cat, 1,000 pictures of dog, and based on that, the machine is supposed to learn to classify them, right? So here are some applications like distribution. Is this a cat or a dog? This can be seen as supervised learning. You are giving the examples of cats, you are giving the examples of dog. Based on that, the system is supposed to figure out the features which are distinguishing both of them. Then let's say predicting the market values of houses, number of rooms. Like you are supposed to predict the market value of house, right? You are given a set of data. For data, you have given the features like number of rooms, what neighborhood it is. Depending on that, the price would vary naturally, right? So you are giving the input, and based on that, if you provide some new data, that suppose it's a two-bedroom apartment in such and such neighborhood, what should be its price? So basically, you have given the examples before, and based on that, the machining is learning to predict the future inputs, right? So supervised can be classified into like classification problems and regression problems. Like I showed you, is this a cat or dog? A problem like this, it has a choice. It can either be a cat or a dog, nothing in between, right? So this is a example of classification problems. Like here you can see, let's say these are all the points saying about the cat and these are all representing dog. Then there's a definite boundary which separates both of them. And about regression problems, as I said, predicting the market value of houses. So this is not something a choice. It can be something middle. If it's saying that it was 25,000 yesterday and it's 35,000, then yeah, it can be 30,000. It is a continuous part. Similarly, temperature, if you predicting temperature, it can be something in between. It's not like it has to be one or the other. For unsupervised learning, basically, you don't provide it the actual class. You don't label the output. You are just providing them, let's say you have 20 photos and you need to put them in 20 groups. So you just provide them with the input, and the machine is supposed to find classifications, find patterns among them and group the following. So one great example would be to like finding frauds in credit card users. Okay, so that would depend on finding anomalies. Let's say a user is generally spending per week 100 rupees and suddenly it's seen a spike in like say 10 times more expenditure in a week. So it's actually finding patterns and distinguishing on the basis of them. So this is a pictorial representation of the same. And the third part, reinforcement learning, like we wouldn't be needing it for any of the events, but yeah. So this is kind of like one example of it would be game AIs. So an analogy is given here, like how you train a pet, right? If you want to teach it to sit down, you ask it to sit and like it could perform a variety of things. It could jump and do something else. But the time it sits, you give him with a reward, say a biscuit, right? So based on that, the dog learns that when he's given a biscuit, when he is actually doing the set command. Similarly, game AIs are trained, right? So it is performing various actions, but as it does something favorable, which you want it to do. You provide it with the reward signal. Okay, so based on that, it learns to like interact with the environment. Okay, so these are the three types. And yeah, so let's talk about the machine learning process. Any machine learning process, be it data science or be it in computer vision, it can kind of be like divided into these process only. So first of all is the choosing of data. Okay, raw data. Suppose we are giving you the problem statements. You have to find the data from the internet. Let's say you have to find data about the handwritten digits. You find it from the MNIST and so and so. You find that raw data, but yeah, and the next step would be, it's like a very important step, applying pre-processing to the data. So the problem with raw data is it can be biased. It would have missing values, like I have tried to mention the possibilities here. So it would have missing values. Say you have to make a model for predicting handwritten digits, right? So you find the data and you find that there are only data for digits 1 to 5. Let's say 6 is missing. That is missing values. Or something like homogeneity, like the number 1 has say 10,000 images, number 2 has 20,000 images, and number 3 has just a couple thousand. So you have to make sure that the data you are providing it is not biased toward one. Right, and then other factors like background noise, the size of image. You need all the images to be of the fixed size, right? So doing these pre-processing steps, you get a prepared data, but like this is not just one process, like fixed step that you have to perform so and so stuff and you get the prepared data. This is like an iteration until you are satisfied that the data is ready. Then you move ahead with the finding the correct algorithm or the model for training the data. And like pre-processing, it is the same with finding models too. It is more of an art than an exact science. So you have to work with many models, work with many algorithms, and based on the results, you have to tune the model and find which one works the best for you, right? You have to find the best combination of pre-processing, the models, that parameters of the models, and whatever works best for you. And the next two steps are not like, these are just for like real world applications. The models are deployed and like softwares are used, not important for you. So yeah, these four steps would be the steps like you would be doing any event. You would be finding the data from some source on internet. You would be applying pre-processing. You would be finding a model to train. You would be adjusting the model based on the results, if it's underfitting, overfitting, and so on. And even the input you provide to it, you have to apply a bit of pre-processing to it to get the to match the data you have trained on. Okay. So as I said previously, like the difference between classic machine learning and deep learning. So basically in machine learning, you provide with the features, right? If suppose you have various face structures and you have to find whether it's a certain person or not. So what all features can be provided, like roundness of face, distance between eyes, and suppose 10 or 20 such features these can define an exact face structure, right? So you provide these features, provide an algorithm, and based on that, the prediction is done. Now, deep learning is something which has been in development in the past decade only. So with this, you don't actually manually make these features, right? The machine actually finds the patterns and finds which features are distinguishing among both faces, and based on that it is done. So like example here, you are just in, here's one of the first layer, like you would be taught about these deep learning, deep neural networks and stuff in the coming workshops. So yeah, this is just an example. Here, this 794 is just the all the pixels flattened out. You are just giving this as an input, And these are just hidden layers, like how these are made, like what all functions it serve, you would be told about in the later workshops. So basically, you are not actually giving it features and stuff that the 9 has a feature of straight line, a curved round oval, or something like that. The machine itself is figuring out what features distinguishes 9 from 8 and so and so. So based on that, it is predicted. So yeah, this is all for the intro to machine learning. Okay, so we would having this much only, and if anyone has any questions, you can ask, and I would be moving on with like Python. So Dinesh.
Yeah, if anybody has a doubt, you can either raise your hand or raise your hand and ask, or you can write it in the chat box. Otherwise, we'll move to the next part.
Yeah, like if anyone wants me to like go a bit slow or something, you can just say in the chat. I'm actually trying to keep it paced so that we can cover everything quick and nobody's bored meanwhile.
Ayush asks, can we do it in C also or only in Python?
Yeah, I would be addressing that problem when we start Python. Okay, so let me start with the Python. Let me just share my screen. Yeah. So Python. So yeah, I thought that many of the first years would be having this question, like they're learning C, then why use Python, right? So there are plenty of languages. You can actually do machine learning in C++, R, and stuff like that. Like they have libraries. C I am not sure. Yeah, but yeah, C++ has libraries to apply machine learning algorithms. Many such languages have, and they're already been built. But Python is actually something that most of us would prefer, right? To be honest, you won't be able to do much with C++. The vast amount of libraries that Python provides, the code styling, the style of code it provides. So like I've included some actual plus points which make Python best fit for machine learning applications, right? So the most important one is pre-built libraries. We would in this workshop only, like Rohan would be dealing about the libraries, NumPy, Pandas. So you would be seeing yourself the power of Python libraries. Okay, so you would understand why C is not at all a good fit for it. And yeah, the code, I would be dealing with the basics of Python right now, and seeing the syntax and stuff, you would find it quite easy too. So no, you can't actually do it in C. Like you can, but it's like written technically not very feasible to try doing it in C. It would be much better to learn Python. It's not much to like it's not a very tough task. If you know the basics of one programming language, it would be easy for you to shift into the other one. Okay, so it's not necessary for you to go through the whole documentation at once. You can just go through the basics I'm going to tell you right now, and then just work as you go along. You can just learn the other syntax and stuff. Okay, so download, yeah, for downloading and installing and like running IDs and stuff, we would be giving the links after the workshop in the team itself, so that you can come prepared for the next workshop. So for now, I'm just gonna go over like installing Python. Yeah, so Python 2 and Python 3, I'm going to just tell few of the differences here. Some might have confusion while installing it. So go for Python 3. Actually, Python 2 is kind of legacy. It is definitely more stable. Like even in the development process, web development, we prefer Python 2 because it's more stable. But for purposes of machine learning, definitely go for Python 3. As you can see, many libraries are now being launched, which are just supported for Python 3 only. And yeah, it's not like minor updates that you are using exact syntaxes of Python 3 and Python 2 and it would work. Like say, these are just two simple examples of like major differences. So here it's a print statement. In Python 3, you have to provide it with the parenthesis, else it won't work. And with say this division operator, uh, in C you divide 5 by 2, you just get to integer division. But in Python 3, you would get exactly 2.5. So these are some of the problems. Like these are there are significant amount of differences. So yeah, go with Python 3 when installing. And other than that, for installing IDE and stuff, we would be sending links. So yeah, let's start with Python. I would be comparing side by side with C programming language so that like you have learned, most of the first years have learned C, so they would have easy. It would be easy for them to understand. So let's go with the data types, right? So basic data types, how we define in C is like int a equals 4 or float a. Here you don't actually have to specify it uh, before assigning, right? You just assign it and it's like automatically defined. As you can see here, I have assigned it to 0.42 and it automatically is assigned float type, right? And I can show you with, let's say I make it 4. You can see it just converts it in int and that's it. And as I was saying, Python is quite powerful. You can see you can just define complex numbers simply. Let's say 1 plus 2j, right? Or you can use these are like one of the like minuscule amount of features that Python provides more than C. And about the operators, right? So I told you that 5 by 2 here would get 2.5. So what is the one for floor division? So here for floor division, you use double slash. This gives you the floor division. For exponentiation, you have a double asterisk, and this would give you 25, right? Apart from that, the other operators are just like in the basic mathematical operators. Now let's talk about strings. Okay, you just assign it to a string and print it, and you are good to go. That's it. So you can see already the ease of programming Python provides. Okay, it's quite English-like. You want to find the length of a string, you just print len of a. Okay, now this string is actually treated as an array, right? So you can reference to a certain position. You want to print D, it's in the second position or the first index. So Python also follows zero indexing. So yeah, you have that. Now one powerful feature is slicing. This one is quite important. You have to like make a note of this slicing. Okay, so to find a substring, what would you normally do in C, right? You go from a loop from 0 and you have to traverse the whole string and find like I need to find from YAM. So it's indexed 2 to 4, right? Here you just need to provide the beginning and the ending plus 1. And you can see the substring is printed. Okay, so and let's go for the like in the C method, how would you do for loops? So yeah, one thing to note here is Python doesn't use semicolons to denote the end of lines and like these curly braces to define blocks. So indentation here matters a lot. So we need to traverse to the string A, right? So as you can see, this indentation is quite important, okay? You can't just write here and expect the code to work as it does in C or write in the same line, okay? So indentation is quite important. And so here I am writing for X in A. What it does is just traverses through each character in the string and I can just print it, okay? So yeah, you can go through the in range of 0 to 10, something like that, and print a index. That also works, but yeah, here you can just traverse element wise. Now another feature I could show you is checking if a substring is present in it or not. Let's say rock in A. This would just return true or false depending on this substring rock is present in Udyam rocks or not. Yeah. So just as simple as that. So yeah, the syntax here is not quite difficult to learn. The thing is, it provides quite a lot of features. So remembering all of them is difficult. So don't get overwhelmed when like I'm showing you the features and stuff. I've just kept it to the basic. But even if you are going to the documentation and go through a lot of features which are the C program does in 10 lines and Python is doing it in 2 lines, don't get overwhelmed by that. As you learn, as you progress with your projects and stuff, you would get the hang of it. So let's talk about the built-in data types Python offers. So C has array, right? So analogous to that, Python has lists. Now, one main difference is this list stores data of various data types, right? As you can see, here's a list L, and it has a string data type and a float data type both. Okay. Now let me just print it. Oh yeah. Now this list is a ordered data type, so you can just reference to a position 0. It would print hello. Okay. As I said about slicing, okay, I talked about slicing in strings. You can apply slicing here too. Let's say I want to find the first two elements in the first element of the list. Okay, so you just reference it to L0. This references to hello. Now you can just slice it 0 to 2. So yeah. Now lists you need if you have done some Python, you have gone through C++ libraries, vectors, let's say, okay. So what you do is push back into those, right? So for that, we have append here. You can append. So yeah, as simple as that. And for removing from the end, we have pop, moves it. And if you want to remove from a certain like position, like you want to remove certain element hello, it's just that easy. So this would be the basic of lists. Now the second data type is tuple. So tuple is basically like list was basically an array, okay, with mixed data types. Tuple is basically an immutable list. Immutable is you can't change the elements of it, okay. So like if I try to yeah, so if I try to change anything from it, it would give an error. Okay, just a minute. I think I forgot yeah, let me show you a few more features of the list too. So let's say we have more data, float data only, okay. So there are functions, you can just print like you want to find the sum of all numbers in the list, okay. You can just use sum. If you need to find the maximum of it, you can use max. So yeah, there are tons of such inbuilt functions that Python will provide. Okay, now resuming the list part. So yeah, let's say I have this tuple. Okay, I said it's immutable. Let me try to change the first position. Okay, let's say I assign it hello. You would see it would give an error that tuple object does not support item assignment. So basically it is an immutable list. Like you would be having questions, why would one need something very similar to list and that too so much restricted? So yeah, one advantage would be since it's immutable, it actually provides you faster traversal, like, and then these can be used as keys in dictionaries. I would be telling about dictionaries later. So yeah, these can be used as keys in dictionaries since they never change. Lists can't be used. So these are some. But here, let me show one interesting stuff. Let's say I give one element as a list. Okay. So the element is one. an integer, a list, and an integer again. This works, right? And I said that lists are immutable, right? So tuples are immutable. But let me change this to, as you can see that it's changing, right? I told that it's immutable, but it's changing. But so the thing here is that tuple is immutable, but lists aren't. So I am actually changing the list, not the tuple itself. Okay. So yeah, these are just some of the like nifty little tricks and like corner stuff that make a problem. So yeah, you can just stick to the basics. You find like if you are having problems printing the sum, you don't know the function, you can actually traverse and find the sum like you do in C and C++, and later you can learn the various shortcuts to it. Okay, so no worries about that. And there would be like many libraries taught to like right now. So we are only telling about the basic stuff so that later when you find something related to that, you can actually just quickly look up into the documentation and find what it's referring to. You have an idea that you can find it here and here. So yeah, third type would be dictionaries. Okay, so if you have worked in C++, you know about maps. So dictionary is equivalent of that. You store it as a key and a value pair. Okay, so you have marks. So you have maths corresponding to 45, science and 34, English and 26. So let me just, you can access any value of a key. Okay, so these are keys. Math, science, and English are keys, and these are the values assigned to them. If you need to find some value assigned to, let's say, science, you can just just a second. You can just reference these values directly using their keys. So this is the benefit of dictionary. You can just find the values using their keys. Okay. Now, another way to get these values is using the get feature function. Okay. Maths.get science. Take a note of the brackets, okay, for defining each one. For the lists, you used the square brackets. For tuples, you use rounded brackets. For dictionary, you are using curly braces, okay. So yeah, take a note of that. Defining it differently would like cause errors. So yeah, as I was telling, apart from directly accessing using key, you can also get the values using get. Now, what is the difference between that way and this one? So let's say I try to find a value of a key that doesn't exist, like S. Okay, it would give here none, and if you try it using just you try it using referencing it directly, you would get an error. So that's the difference. Only like it would one would return a key error and another would return a null. And these are mutable. You can change the values of keys and so these can be modified. Only tuple, as you saw, was immutable, and coming to set, this is also immutable. Okay, so set is the fourth and like the final data type I would be discussing. So in set, it is like the sets of C++ only. Every element here is unique and the elements of sets are immutable, but the set actually is mutable itself. Okay, that might sound a bit confusing, but just let me show you. So here's a set. I have defined nums equal, here I am using curly braces too. Now yeah, so here you can see I have defined 3 twice, 2 twice, and 1 also twice, but it's displaying only one time. Okay, so this holds only unique values. If you are providing an element which already exists, it just stores it once. Okay. So as I said, it's it's actually an unordered data type. Okay, there's no point of indexing. There's nothing like nums2, nums1. It isn't stored ordered. Okay, so this is an unordered data type. But as I said, the elements are immutable because you actually can't reference it. You can't find two from it and like tell that change it to something else. But the set is mutable. Okay, what this means is you can add something to it. I can add an element 4, and if I print it later, you get 4 to it. Okay, so basically you can change the set, the total net content of set, and to remove it, if you remove 3, it would just remove the occurrences of 3, and you would be left with 1 and 2. So yeah, just to give you a recap, the basic data types would be these numbers, integers, floats, complex. The operators keep note of these two operators. These are only different ones, exponentiation and float division. Strings are just like arrays, the basic C++ type. Now, yeah, so lists is basically C arrays. Tuples are immutable lists. Dictionaries are maps equivalent of C++ holding key value pairs. And sets are just holding unique elements. Now just some basic syntax like defining about, yeah, so if and else loop. Here, take a note that it's not else if here, it's elif. And as you can see, the indentation, okay, so if you even change the indentation a bit, it would give an error. So whenever you code, yeah, we would be telling about the various IDs, so these would be done automatically, so no issues in that. But yeah, these are just minor differences you will be facing moving on to C and C++. Okay, there won't be much. You can just go through the documentation. We will be providing the links for going more in depth, but you can just go over the basics of it. These data types I've already discussed. You can go again, revise it, and you don't need to actually learn through all of it. Okay, as you go ahead and solving problems, you would be getting comfortable with it. Now Rohan would be telling you about the Python libraries. Okay, so why, one question would ask is like, why would you need such libraries? So I defined quite a lot of data types already here, but the libraries he would be telling about are for processing data. Like when you are getting the data in for training purposes. Okay, so those data would be large in amount. Processing them and like modifying them would be quite difficult using. You are not going to traverse through in a loop in 3D data. Like you are not going to traverse through 3D data using a nested loop and change the values that way. Okay, or if you need something plotted, you need to visualize how the model is working, or you need to read from CSV files, stuff like the data would be provided you in CSV files. For those stuff, you would be needing Python libraries, and yeah, Rohan would be taking care of that. So yeah, over to you, Rohan.
Okay, so thank you, Ronit. So as Ronit told, you might think Python gives you a lot of functionalities and it's very good, faster than C, small codes, everything. But still, there are a lot of things you need to do which can't be done just by basic Python. So we have built-in libraries. These are just pieces of code that are compiled together, and you can download them from their documentation sites and all that. So starting with NumPy, it is a library that allows you to work on n-dimensional arrays. So like what the data you would be using for processing the raw data, it will be mostly two-dimensional arrays or three-dimensional arrays in case of images and videos and all that. So starting with the library, there's an import line you need to use to import the library. So if you were to import NumPy, you would just write import NumPy. And if anyone is wondering what's this ID, it's Jupyter ID. And you have to just write the code and if you press shift enter, only this part of the code will be running and nothing else. Okay, but don't confuse that this first part of the code is different and second part of the code is different, but they are all interrelated in each other, but will only run that block of the code which you want to run. Okay, so this import numpy line will help you to import the library, and like you have to use this name a lot of times, right? So if you want to write this name as anything else, so you can use the keyword as, and you can write anything here. So short for numpy, we can use like the general name is np. So we use np everywhere else other than numpy. So if you knew that list can be made in Python, right? So the NumPy library works on NumPy arrays. It's almost the same as list in the Python, but you can see that we can define like change a list to an array by the command np.array, and the parameters of that function will be the list you want to change. So here a will become a numpy array. Okay, so if for example you said this c will be equal to this, so if you wanted to see the type of c, it will tell you it's a list. Okay, and if you wanted to see the type of a, it will be numpy array. Okay, so c is a list and a is an numpy array, nd array, n dimensional array. Okay, so these are two of the functions which you use to change a list to an numpy array, and you can also change any tuple into a numpy array, and there's no problem in immutability or anything here. You can again change these values here if you want to change, like b0 is equal to let's say 5, and then if you print b, so the value is changed. So if you change a tuple into a numpy array, there's no problem. It's still an array and it works like a list. So let's say if you want to make an array of size 3,6, okay, 2D array of 3,6 with zeros filled in that. So numpy has a function np.zeros, and in the parameters you just need to pass a tuple. Okay, so these are not just numbers, these are tuples, and you have to give, like you can give any number of dimensions, like I can randomly write any number of any size of list, and it will give me a numpy array with zeros filled with that amount of dimensions. Okay, so if I run this, okay, sorry. So if I run this, I will get a huge array, and that's generally, this part generally means it will make a one array of 4D array, and that for one of the 4D arrays will contain a 3D array of shape 6, 3, 6, and every 3D array will be a 2D array of 3, 6, and all that. Okay, so mostly you will be working with 2D arrays and 3D arrays. So if I give 3, 6, the first part of this tuple will be the number of rows, 3 rows, here we are, and 6 columns. Okay, so 3 rows and 6 columns, and we have a numpy array with zeros filled in there. Okay, similarly we have you can say if you wanted 1, so if you change zeros to ones, it will fill ones. Okay, so maybe if you wanted like random other values you want other than zeros and ones, so we have np.full. Okay, so that will be again give the dimension, and you have to give another parameter, and this parameter will be the value you want in the whole array. Okay, and the value will be same throughout the array. There will be no difference. If I had to put like for example take 1 plus 2j, so everything will be 1 plus 2j in the whole array 3, 3, 3. Okay, so these are some of the functionalities, and NumPy library also has one of the functionalities to produce random numbers. So if you wanted an array of any size with random values filled in there, okay, so you have to just write np.random.random, and in this again the parameters will be 2 cross 2 tuples. Okay, one the shape of the array you want. So if you wanted to change these again, it will have two arrays of 2 comma 2, and remember these values will be only in the range of 0 to 1 always. Okay, so again, and it can also generate random integers, and what number you put here is the number it will take from 0 to that number to produce any of the random number between that. So this is the this number 4 is the random number generated by this function. Okay, so if I run it again and again, the number will obviously change. Okay, so and you can also change the low value, like if you wanted a random number between 6 to 12. So if you change this, you will get a random number every time that will always be between 6 to 12. And remember, this value 12 is exclusive. 12 will never come if you put 12 there. Okay, so wait a minute. Okay, so next we go, like let's say if you wanted an array which had elements at a specific steps, at a specific distance between each element is fixed. Okay, so you have a function arange. Okay, the this arange is generally what it does, it runs a loop it runs a loop from this starting value. This is the start parameter, this is the stop parameter, and this is the step value. Okay, so like if I had to change this to C format, what you would be writing, like for integer I is equal to 0 and I less than 30. Again, in most of the functions in Python, you would notice that the end value is also always exclusive. Okay, so you will never include the end values. Okay, and we will be moving at a step of 5. Okay, so I plus equal to 5, and you will be just including the arrays, like including the values of I into F. Okay, so this function will create that array at 5 steps from 0 till it reaches this end value. Okay, and it will not include this end value. So if we run this, we will get an array F 0 to 5, then we will move plus 5 10, then again 15, and it will go till 30, and 30 is out of the range, so it stops there. Okay, and there's another function np.linspace. What this does is it takes the starting value and ending value, and it divides that complete space into the number of blocks you want. Okay, so it takes from 0 to 5 and divides it into 10 parts, and it will give all the points you need that parts were cut in. Okay, so let's say if I said 0 5 5. Okay, so it has cut into 5 parts, 0 to 1.25, 1.25 to 2.5, and everything. Okay, so like it will give all the float values in between that part. Okay, so every integer, every two float values, adjacent values, will have the same difference, but it varies with the number of parts you want it in. Okay, so if I put 10, so it will change, and again I will put 15, it will again change, it will give 15 values here, and again it will change more. Okay, so let's say if I let's say I made an array over here C, and you wanted that, you have created it by mistake 3 comma 6. Okay, and you wanted to change the shape of it. Okay, so what you would do is, one of the functions of any numpy array is a reshape function. Okay, let's take for example this F array. It has 6 values. Okay, So the shape of this array will be 1 comma 6. Okay, and you wanted it to be an array of maybe let's say 2D array of 2 comma 3. So if you put 2 comma 3 here, and please notice this is not a tuple. Okay, these are different parameters. So if you put it 2 comma 3, it will create a new array of 2 rows and 3 columns. And if you will notice, like these 3 values are taken into first row, again 3 values are taken into next row. So let's say if I put like 45 here, so I have these many other again new 3 values. So again these 3 values will go down there, and we can't make 2 comma 3, we can't reshape these 9 values into 2 comma 3, because 2 comma 3 we can only make 6 values. Okay, so that other 3 values can't be ignored, so you have to give it 3 comma 3. And if you by mistake gave it 2 comma 3, it will show an error, cannot reshape an array of size 9 into 2 comma 3. Okay, so you have to give it that. And for example, you will be working with very large data sets in this project. So for example, let's say you didn't know what's the total size of the array, and you wanted only the data set with fixed number of rows, and you don't know what's the amount of columns you want. Okay, so Python has that functionality, and if you put -1 instead of that given value which you would have known, it will again put that value instead of what could have been. And please do not do like -1 comma -1, it doesn't work. -1 will only work one time. Okay, so if let's say I wanted it 4 comma 2, but you didn't know that here 2 comes, and you didn't know like f had that f array had 8 values, so -1 will always put 2 in place of that. Okay, but only one time. Okay, not again. And this also is one of the functions of any numpy array. Only numpy array is not list. Okay, so if you have any array, and you put dot shape in front of it and print it, it will give you the shape of that array. So if you would notice this C array, we had C array here, and its shape is 3 comma 6. So it has given us the answer 3 comma 6. Okay, so if we wanted to print F shape, then it will give 8 comma 1. Okay, so again, or maybe say this new array which we have made here, its shape, it will give 4 comma 2, which is this. Okay, and one of the function is again dot travel, which takes any of the array of any shape and turns it into 1D array. Okay, it's like generally it's nothing else than let's say dot we have to reshape any of the array to 1 comma -1. Okay, so it will do the same thing. Okay, but it will make 2-dimensionally. Okay, so you can do this, or you can use this new array dot ravel function. Okay, and as
Rohan,
yes,
sorry to interrupt. They're asking to explain reshape once again. So before we move on.
okay, sorry. So this function reshape. Okay, so what this will do, take any array, and you have to put in the dimensions you want to change it into. Like let's take for example, okay, this E array. Okay, it's 2 comma 2. Let's change it to 40 comma 26 or something like that. Okay, so it's this E array is an array of random values which will have 40 rows and 26 columns. Okay, so if we had to change the shape of this E array, and we wanted to change it, let's say you wanted to reduce the rows, and we wanted like this second row is added to over here, okay, after these values, and again the fourth row of this added to this values again, okay. So just we have to half the number of rows, okay, so 20, and we need to double the amount of columns. So this will again give us with a new array which will have okay, let's say 20 comma 522, okay. So this will again be an array of 20 columns and 52 rows. And remember again these values, how they are going into their places, you need to remember that, okay. Wait a second. So, and again I told you, like if you didn't know, like this part is 52, you can put it -1. So again it will put in 52 in place of that. Let's say if it was 10, it will again put 104 in case of that, okay. And you can print this new array, okay. So this is just reshaping any of the array, and you wanted like change the shape of the array, and this just doesn't applies to this 1D array, 2D to 2D array reshaping. You can change it into other part, okay. If like you wanted, it was 10 comma 104, you'll like you wanted a 3D array of 10 comma 2 comma 152, right? So it will again make 10 arrays which are in line with each other, which are 2D arrays of 2 comma 52. Each of this array will have 2 rows and 52 columns, okay. And there will be 10 of these arrays. So if any problem, like you can again tell me. And if this is okay, this Ravel will again put all these values, all of these values into like a straight line, okay. This, and as Ronit said, indexing and slicing, like these works the same as the Python list, you know. So one of the great features of Python is NumPy arrays, will I said, will be broadcasting, okay. So like the -1 will automatically calculate the value, like if you don't know one of the dimensions, that will be in place of that value which you do not know. So it will again calculate the values. For example, if we are taking in consideration the array E, so it has 40 comma 26, right? So it will have 40 into 26 elements in it, okay. That's 10, okay. So these many values will be in this array E. So like if you wanted these 1040 values put into another shape, like you wanted 10 rows of 104 values, okay. So if you put here 10 rows, and for example we didn't know 104 values, so we put -1, and it will make 10 rows of all these 104 values. So -1 is just calculating the value for you, okay. So it's just keeping your work small, and this -1 will be of very use when you get to work with bigger data sets where you don't know the number of data points you're working on and the test points you're working on, all this, okay. Any problem again, any issue? Okay, so the next part of or I'd say the last part, the most important part, is broadcasting in an NumPy array, okay. So for example, if you like, let's take a list, and if you wanted to -5, So what will this give? This will give an array, because you can't minus, subtract or add any values or multiply any values into a list, okay? Because these both are of different types, list and integer. But NumPy array has broadcasting built into it. So for example, if you wanted to add a value 5, so what this will do is add 5 to each of these values in the A. So if we run this, previously A was 1 to 4 5 8 7, okay? So, and after adding 5, you can see 1 is changed to 6, 2 to 7, 4 to 9. Everything is just increased by 5, okay? So let's say if I wanted to multiply anything by 5. So 1 will change to 5, 2 will change to 10, 4 will change to 20, everything, every value will be changed with it, okay? Or let's say if we put double multiplied mark, so we know it will just move it to that power. So 1 to the power 5 will be 1, 2 to the power 5 will be 32, 4 to the power 5 will be 124, 1024, and again that goes like that, okay? And this only doesn't work with numpy arrays and an integer value or float value like that. It also works with a numpy array and another list, okay? What is meant by ln75 on the side? Where? Oh, these things are just blocks of codes, okay? So this will be the number of line you were running, okay? So just you need sometimes you need to have a track of which block was ran first, okay? Since this is not a C++ file where you will write one thing in a single file and run it, so you would know that one line has run before that line and again all that things. Here it may happen that you may run this line and maybe you need to change something, so you run this line. So you could notice that this 43, this line was ran before this line, so it doesn't always go that the above line is ran first and second this one, okay? So this is just blocks of code and these are just numbering of those codes, okay? So as I was saying, this just doesn't work with an numpy array and an integer or float values. This also works with lists, okay? So for example, let's say we wanted to add 1 to 4 this value. So what this will do, this will try to duplicate these values to make it into the shape of the A, okay, this shape. So what it can do is just duplicate these values 1 to 4 and again put in 1 to 4 below that, okay? So if I run this, you can see 1 is added to this, 2 is added to this, and 4 is added to this. So 1 is added to this, 2 this, 4 this, and again 5 is added. 5 plus 1 gives 6, 8 will be added with 2, and 7 will be added with 4, okay? So it will always try to change this the given list, or you can put in an another numpy array in place of this, and it will try to always change the smaller dimensional array into the bigger dimensional array to fit, okay? But if you like put in some dimension like which it cannot enlarge into the bigger one, it will always give an array like operands could not be broadcast together, which shapes this, okay? So you will always need to put in values which are like possible to be duplicated to enlarge into the bigger arrays, okay? So like if you wanted to see what the smaller one will be changing into, you could put like this, okay? So um, you could see that this 1 2 3 is changed into 1 2 3 and 1 2 3, okay? So for example, like we put it as a 2D array where these values will be again this like this part is a 2D array with 2 rows and 1 column. Okay, so it's like a 1 comma 2 matrix. So these 1 2 1 2 1 2 will be changed, and again if we put it back this part, so these 1 2 1 2 values will be subtracted from this. Okay, so 1 minus 1 will be 0, 5 minus 3 will be 2, 2 minus 1 will be 1, and 8 minus 2 will be 6, and again it follows that. Okay, so you can do these things, but you always need to have the picture of what will be the dimensions, and the most important part in the NumPy functioning and pre-processing is one of the most important part is this dimensioning things. Okay, so you need to like focus more on these parts, and most important is slicing, I would say. This would be a major part in this projects and all that. Okay, so like let's say we have learned to make arrays, and we have learned to reshape them and change them into different things. Okay, so we will need to plot those on a graph paper, let's say. So this library matplotlib.pyplot, this is a collection of commands that will have some functionality to plot your graphs. And let me ask if there's any doubt in the NumPy part. Anyone wants to ask anything? Any issues?
Yes, Aniket. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bhaiya, I was asking that when you subtracted that 1 comma 2 from that array, previously it was showing error, but now it is not showing. What is the difference between the two?
Uh, Previously, I was deleting an array which was of shape 1 comma 2. Okay, and if I will show that previously I was deleting this part, and now I am deleting this. Okay,
So
so
what's the difference between these two?
this is a 1D array. Okay, this will be a 1D array which will have one row and two columns. Okay, and this is a 2D array which will have two rows and one columns. So if uh, if I try to explain that why this gives array is because if you would try to duplicate these values and turn it into this, turn it into a shape of let's say 2 comma 3 to fit to these needs, but it will give an array give an error because you can't create an third value randomly out of here to just put another array like 1 comma 2 comma and another third random value over here. Okay, so this will give an error. We will need these three values. Okay, but over here if you would see this part, we can again duplicate this one in one of the dimension, or I'd say extrapolate this to make it into a 2 comma 3 array. Okay, so this part is same. These both of these arrays will have the same dimension. Okay, so now we can subtract these values 1 from 1, 2 from 2. Okay, and again this one from 1. Okay, so
Okay, Bhaiya. Yes,
this
sir, I
is
got
your
it. Yes, sir.
okay. And any other, any doubt? Okay, so I guess no doubt. So as I said, this library will help you plot your graphs. Okay, so let's say if you wanted to plot points on a graph paper, and you wanted to plot let's say this. So this will be the group of x points you want on the graph, and this will be the group of y points. Okay, so this is essentially like you would want to mark 0 comma 1, 1 comma 2, 2 comma 3, and 3 comma 4 on the graph. Okay, so if I would run this, importing, sorry. So again, this is the import line for the library matplotlib.pyplot, and again we won't write these big lines again and again. So we use the as keyword and shorten it to plt. Okay, and if we run this, we get this straight line which will be going through all these points. Okay, so and these points will not be smoothly curved, this will be hardly rigid lines. So if I had to change this 4 to 7, so it will just go through these points. And if you wanted to like change that, you don't want to see the lines, you just want to see the points on it, so there are a lot of keywords which will be the third argument of this function, plt.plot. Okay, and this will change what your graph looks like. Okay, so if you put a small o there, so it will mark with o little circles. Okay, so if you put like a star there, it will mark with small stars over there. And wait, can we set the scale of the, yes, you can set the scale, we'll get to that. And let's say if you wanted to mark with a triangle that's facing downward, so if you put small v, it will mark with small triangles and all that. Okay, so let's say if you don't like the color of this graph, so if you put r there, then it will change the color, red colors. Okay, so if you don't like red, you want black and all that, you can change. Okay, and let's say if you want different lines. Okay, like if you put k, it will make black lines. Okay, since you haven't given what you will use as a marker, it will just put on lines over there. Okay, and this k is telling me that you have to plot the graph as a black point. And let's say if you wanted to make points like dotted lines instead of these straight lines. Okay, so we will have this dash lines functions. Okay, so instead, if you have k here and you put 2 dashes and you run there, it will make dotted lines and all that. Okay, and if you wanted dash and dotted line and all that. Okay, so this will be the list of functions. This will give you this will give you like what you want to at the place of lines. Okay, and these will be the type of lines you want. Okay, the like where I put 2 dashes, if you had put this colon mark, it would have made it would have made dotted lines in place of that. Okay, and always you would notice that every graph has a y label and x label. Okay, so if you wanted to put plt.y label, so let's say you have plotted a graph of temperature versus time, so your y label would be temperature. Okay, and your x label would be time, so it will be changed here, temperature and time, all that. Okay, and this plt.show line is needed in, I guess, only in Jupyter, because some of the parts of matplotlib need some other functionality. So plt.show will be needed after you have put any of the plt.plot lines. So just make sure to put it in the last line of that every block you have made the graph. Okay, and again this plt.title will be giving you the title of the graph you want to put in. And yes, Ayush, you can make these into smoother curves, but you will need to give them more points to make them smooth, right? So like your plot won't be determining by itself, like it has to go smoothly over here and all that. Okay, so we will get to that. One of the functions of Python, like NumPy library also, it can calculate cos values, sine values, tan values, sine inverse values and all that. Okay, so trigonometry, Fourier transforms and all that. So let's say, as I told you about lin space, it will take 10 points between 0 to 4 into np.pi will give you the value of pi. Okay, so it will take 10 points between 0 to 4 pi. Okay, and np.cos, if you put any of the numpy array or any integer value or anything like that, it will change every value to the cos of that value. Okay, so like if this will print the like this value, cos values of 10 points which are between 0 to 4 pi. Okay, so if we print that, we get this random edged curve. Okay, so to make this more smoother, you would like need more points to it. Okay, so let's say if I made 20 points, like we wanted 20 points between 0 to 4 pi. Okay, so if we run that, you would notice that the curve has been made more smoother. Okay, so let's take 200 points. So I guess that will be enough points to make the curve smooth enough. Okay, so this will give you a cos graph, and let's say if I wanted a sine curve, so put it in p.sine and you run and you have your sine curve. Okay, and again that goes for tan and all that. Okay, so we have these functions also in NumPy library, and here let's say if you wanted to plot a graph of random points, and again I forgot that part, like if you have given only one list and you haven't given another list, so what it does is it marks those points at different intervals. Okay, so let's say if you have random values, and I said that random function will generate values between 0 and 1 only. Okay, so 0 and 1. So uh, since these are 10 points, this will be an array of shape 1 comma 10. Okay, there will be 10 points which will be random values. So as many times I run, this graph will randomly change. Okay, so like if you don't put any point, Python assumes that you have put in like 10 values, so you have put in 0 1 2 3 4. Okay, randomly values till 10. Okay, so if you don't put, it will still show the graph, but where you have essentials of like you need x points, where the y points you need. Okay, so you have to put the x part also and y part also, and these parts can be numpy array or list also. Okay, or tuples also. So as Ayush asked, like you wanted to limit the graph, or you may extend the scale of the graph and all those things. So if like let's say you wanted to see the graph between these parts only, 0 to 6. Okay, so if I put plt.x limit 0 to 6, then it will show only graph from 0 point to 6 point and all the y points available in that graph. Okay, so you would notice that there will be no point shown before 0 and after 6. Okay, and for example, let's say if I put it 30, so it will go till 30 even if there are no values present to print. Okay, and same goes for y limit also. Okay, so if I put like 0.04 to 0.54, so it will only give values from 0.04 to 0.54, and it will not go above 0.54 or go below 0.04. Okay, so these are one of the functions, and again, let's see, like there are not only these curve graphs to be plotted, these line graphs to be plotted. Matplotlib can also plot bar graphs. Okay, so this again, it will take np.arange 5 will give you a numpy array which will have 5 values which are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and what np.square does is again change all the values in that array to its square values. Okay, so if you would say like if you see 1, it will be till only 1, and this 2 will be till 4, this 3 will be till 9, and if you want to make sure that it is, you can also make a grid, and if you put plt.grid true, it will make a grid to make sure like the values are matching to that point only. Okay, so you can see this, it's between 8 and 10, it will be 9, it's at 4. Okay, so these are different functions, and also like plt.scatter is the same thing as plt.plot with a part where I showed here. If you put small o, it will make the same thing as plt.scatter. Okay, so here let's remove the grid part, and for example, let's say if you wanted some text on your graph. Okay, so you also have one of the functions plt.text. Okay, and these first two values will be x-axis and y-axis points where you need your text. Okay, so let's say if I wanted the graph at 2 comma 6, string at 2 comma 6, and like let's say I wanted to write Udyam at 2 comma 6, so it will change to 2 comma 6 and it will write Udyam. Okay, so this part of this text, this left bottom corner will be at 2 comma 6. Okay, and it will write Udyam at that point. So any issues at matplotlib, anyone, any doubt?
If anyone has a doubt in this part, you can ask it now. Otherwise, we'll move to the next part. I guess we can go to the next part.
Okay, so as Ronnie told, we get the raw data from many data sets, and we need to process those data sets to change into some values we need to make them efficient for our machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence models and all those things. So pandas is one of those libraries which allows you to read big parts of the data sets, do some changes in it and all those parts. So again we are starting with importing the library with import pandas, and again as keywords as pd small for pandas. And let's say if we wanted to read an excel file. Okay, so if you would go to your uh, file commands, so you can see I have a file here which is an xlsx file, which is an excel file. So we have a command pdf.read excel. So as you most of you would know, like an excel file is a 2D grid and every cell contains some columns and some values. Okay, so pd.read excel just reads that complete excel file and makes it into a pandas data frame. Okay, so this data frame is generally uh, logically, if you would think, like it's only a 2D array in the background. Okay, so if you use this function read excel to read this excel file, you would have a 2D array, and df used this is same as print df or saying df. Okay, so it will print that data frame and it will tell this data frame has 786 rows and 10 columns. Okay, as you can see, x1 to x8 and y1, y2. These are the 10 columns, and 0 to 767. These are the 786 rows of the dataset. Okay, so like maybe if you wanted to see only the first few parts of that dataset, you can use df.head, dataframe.head, and it will give you only first 5 points. And maybe if you wanted to see first 10 points, then put in value 10, and you will get starting 10 values of these. Okay, and again same goes if you wanted to see last 10 values, df.take. Okay, so these are similar. And again you can use the read CSV to read any CSV file. Okay, so read Excel for any Excel file and read CSV for any CSV file, since most of the major data sets you would be working on would be in the form of CSV or Excel file. So these are two important functions to get these data frame into your program. Okay, and one of these functions of this will be changing this data frame to like completely numpy array. Okay, so you can work on it. Okay, CSV file, yes, it's a short for comma separated values. Okay, so it's like essentially same as Excel file. Okay, so you don't need to worry about that. You won't need to know much on that. Okay, so if you can see, this data frame 2 will be the CSV file which you will be having at your computer. You would need at your desktop or like in the same folder. Okay, or otherwise if it's not in the same folder as this Python file you are running, you would have to give the complete path of this file. Okay, and again this is the data frame, and one of the functions of every data frame is df.columns. It will give you a list of all the columns that are in the data frame. So this is df1, data frame 1, and these all of these columns are this, and this is df2.index. This will give the list of all the rows in the column. Okay, so since the CSV file didn't have any fixed marked up rows, so the pandas library has already made it in the background for us, and it says starts at 0, stops at 60,000 at step 1. So this is same as np.arange we have read in the first part of the numpy. Okay, range index. Okay, so if you put this to numpy part, it will change this whole data set into a 2D array. Since you can say this is a big 2D array with 60,000 rows and 785 columns. Okay, so it will change that complete array to like complete data frame to that array. Okay, let me just run these first. So these will give the index, and this will change the data frame 2 to a numpy array. Okay, as you can see, this is the format of the numpy array. Okay, so again, if you want to see the shape of this array, we have 60,000 points with 785 columns. Okay, so as you saw one of the animations in Ronit's presentation, it had very big neural network which was predicting images. It was from this MNIST library, which is a globally available free dataset which you can use for any of the projects, anything you can say. So what this every row shows, it shows every pixel of the image, and this label shows what this image is. Okay, so we can also see images using the matplotlib library. So let's say as you have learned these slicing parts in the list also, and numpy array also has the same slicing. So I will let's say I want only the first of this parts only. Okay, so what it will be like I will need the first row of this. Okay, so let's take the first row of this complete data set, and we don't need the first value because it's not the part of the image, and we need rest all the values. Okay, so that will be 1 comma 784. Okay, so at actually 785. Okay, so this will give us one image. Okay, which will be a 28 cross 28 cross image, 2D image. So if you wanted to print that, since this will be again a 1D array with 784 values in a straight line, we want to make it an image of 28 cross 28. We again use this reshape function. We give these two commands 28 cross 28, and we run this, and we see this first image is 0. Okay, so we can see this command 0 and it's a label 0. Okay, so for example, let's say if we change it to 2, so we will see an image which will be a okay wait okay sorry, it will be an image of 4. Okay, so label is 4. So there are a lot more things you need to learn, and just keep practicing these small things and keep tinkering with small functions. And one of the useful features of Jupyter Jupyter Notebook, where should we as beginners start executing Python? Like we will be giving some small tasks for you all to do. Okay, and you will you like always have this Udyam workshop teams. You have to you have any doubts, ask questions. You have like coordinators, you can ask questions, and we will be giving you small tasks to do, so you can try those on your own. And if you have any doubt, like we are on the site. So okay, that's it from me. Anything, any doubts, anyone? Okay.
So I guess we're done. If
Yes.
any doubts, you can ask. We are here for some time.